I think it's important to note that I'm part of an interdisciplinary team. So within that concept, we have a medical group which would include the doctors, the medical team there, the physiotherapists for whom I help to manage and facilitate, the soft tissue therapists, and also nutrition. So we will have a wider group also of specialists such as surgeons and consultants, and we're using the likes of consultants in sleep and recovery just now as well to try and optimize the health of our athletes. And our medical group are part of the high performance team who operate with the athletic performance staff. So those would be strength and conditioning staff and the data analysts. So we come together regularly with established purposeful meetings where we have significant aims that are based around planning, logistics, load management, and also monitoring, where we want to look at subjective and objective measures on a regular but not daily basis, and that allows us to be impactful with information and to ensure that we can optimize player health and well-being. Multi-sport provides an exposure to multiple sports. The Commonwealth Games might be up to around 16 different sports, and the difference in context there is that we're essentially looking in that acute triage setting. So the salvageable injuries are those that will still occur potentially in training for competition that's only a few days away. So we have to examine exactly what the triage means and the injury, what that means for the athlete in the very short term. It's not much based around the rehab. So it's got to be an examination of again, aims and goals and context. So an athlete who is at the end of their career, or this might be their final games, will have a very different outlook on what a minor injury might be compared to an athlete who's at the very start of their career, and this might be their first of many games. So there's a risk reward around balancing how we examine injury and how we consider acute injury management. It's also good to remember that athletes are simply humans who happen to be good at a specific sport at a certain time. So therefore, we have to be cognizant of them as humans and take into account the fact that they have their own ambitions, they have their own motivations, and they have their own understandings and pressures. Well, it's important to consider that the athletes participating in these youth events are essentially developing athletes, but they're not mini adults, you know. So having a comprehension around what stage of life and their physical development is really important. There's also a mental development aspect because they're entering potentially their first ever multi-sport environment, and that situation is very, very different. There's a lot of novelty occurring there, from the logistics of getting to and from perhaps an eating hall, the way that they're sharing lifts with athletes from different countries and also from different sports. There's an aspect of ensuring that they've got enough self-management and awareness that they can actually gather all of the kit that they're required to get to a bus, to be able to manage the transport to get to a venue. There's an aspect to logistics and situation that they perhaps not come across. So I look at a number of things here. There's the exposure to novelty that's really different for the younger athlete. So the environment is very different, and we want to be encouraging in that. Motivation is probably key in this, and what is the why? Simon Sinek would describe the why as being a critical feature for humans. So understanding the why and whether athletes are motivated from an intrinsic or an extrinsic perspective is really important, as is regulation. How do athletes and students, how do they change or maintain thoughts, feelings, arousal, behaviors, and attention in the different contexts that you're describing there, whether it's studies or whether it's performance sport? Ultimately, we're looking for a development here of athletes and students in terms of awareness. So they have their own self-awareness, they understand their own drives, they understand their needs, they understand the needs of others, they understand and comprehend cues and context and ultimately environments and the big picture of where they are at that point. At any moment for a student or athlete, it's important that they recognize what do they need to pay attention to. A developing curiosity is really important, I think. They should never stop improving whatever they're doing, and these lead to positive outcomes in terms of growth, self-actualization, and motivation will help to promote that. If they're goal-orientated and that's an aspect from both life and in terms of their sports, then we're developing performance, and we're looking at a real connection there with their own community, and we're looking at that being really positive in terms of education as well as sports. This should be something that they then develop their knowledge and skills. They have an emotional contextual intelligence, and ultimately their mindset should be based around growth and really this learning and practice development towards mastery. So there is a value to technology. The key here is probably understanding the value and not being over-reliant on it. We don't want to lose the human element. And you're describing physio there, and physio has got so many soft skills that allow us to interact with humans who happen to be athletes. It allows us to interact and potentially interpret information in a different way from numbers only. So we need to understand and be able to evaluate whatever information that's coming into us. The technology provides a vast number of data points. The critical feature is probably how we connect those data points to be impactful. That's probably really important. We want the tech to help assist the development of any kind of sport. We want it to help us start, lead, and develop conversations as well, though. And that's important. The conversations are with the athletes, the conversations are with the support staff, and those conversations are with the coaching staff as well. And that helps us inform load management, and it helps us inform athletes to help with their understanding of themselves. Physio is an art and a science, and it's great being part of this advanced. Perhaps for the students within this course, they get a global perspective of sport that helps them to understand physio as an art and a science. And what we're looking at in sport is trying to separate the signal from the noise and just help us to join the dots in a more impactful way.